Hello and welcome to another live lesson with me, Anna English, here on English Like a Native. Now, today's lesson is a little bit different. I'm going back to doing the topics that I know you've all been asking for a while, but today's is more of a somber, a sad topic, but a topic that we all will encounter at some point in our lives, and that's the topic of death. Now, why am I doing this now? Well, I have been asked for this lesson a few times actually, and I had it on my list, but a few weeks ago, a very good friend of mine lost his life, and his funeral was on Friday. And it just seemed like the right time to be tackling this topic as it's something I was experiencing, and because I realised actually there's a lot of vocabulary and many phrases and things that would be very helpful for you in this very difficult circumstance. So I've put together some notes for you. As always, these notes will be available to anyone who donates a super chat, and they will also be made available to the majority of my patrons. So $3 plus patrons, you will have these dropped in your Dropbox straight after the lesson. And they're also available to buy from my shop on the website www.britishenglishpro.com. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to jump straight into this lesson. So let's start with the notes. Death and funerals. Learn English. Death is a part of life and one of the few things that we can be certain of. Eventually, it comes to us all. Death means to no longer live or exist. So let's look at some of the vocabulary you would need when talking around the subject of death and some of the traditions around British funerals. All right, so what I normally do, I'll just turn off my sound so you can't hear my computer pinging away. What I normally do is ask you to practice using some of the vocabulary by writing sentences, and I will try to correct you as I go along. Of course, I won't be able to answer everyone. I will be responding to all my patrons. You guys, I've got you here. So just write your messages there, patrons. Otherwise, I'll try to respond to you if I can and help you with using the vocabulary in sentences. All right, so let's move on. So first of all, we have death. The word death is a noun, and the example sentence I've given for this word here is, my patient is afraid of death. And I've given another one. There has been a death in the family. So this is a sentence that you might hear quite often, actually. So I might ask you, can you see this? Hang on, let me just show you in case you didn't see that. So my patient is afraid of death. There has been a death in the family. So if, say someone doesn't turn up to work, or there's something not quite right with someone, they seem down and not quite themselves, you might say, what's wrong with them? And you might respond, there's been a death in their family, or they've just had a death in the family, so they're going to take some time off work, you might say. All right, let me have a look at what my patrons are saying. Hi Anna, hi class, hello. I'm babysitting my very young niece. She needs to learn English since we're in the US, but her mummy says no screens. Yeah, I understand that. Many mothers try to restrict the amount of time children are on phones and computers. It's understandable. So she can't learn from you, Anna. Very sad. Well, you can pass on some of the learning, perhaps. I'm sure you'll be able to help her with her English. Okay. So, what are you guys saying in the chat room? I died because I ate too much chocolate. Wow. Can you eat too much chocolate? Is that possible? I hope not. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. Long life for you, Anna. Thank you very much. I hope that everyone here has a long and healthy life. Death is not polite, is it? What do you mean it's not polite? The word death is just a standard word. There's nothing impolite about the word death. So do expand on that statement that you made, because I'm not quite sure what you mean. Okay, so let's move on. So we've got the word death. And then we have the word dead. Dead. And this is an adjective. So you might say, I am afraid the dog is dead. Now, I've used I'm afraid here. Do you remember the lesson we did recently where I told you the meaning of afraid in this context is I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry the dog is dead. So if I see you after a long period apart and you know I have a wonderful, very friendly dog, and you say, oh, how is the dog? I might say to you, I'm afraid the dog is dead. So I'm sorry, the dog's dead. I could also use the sentence in this way. Let me show you the next part. They carried out important research using dead rats. They carried out important research using dead rats. Okay, so if you want to try and use the word dead or death in a sentence, then please do feel free, and I'll try and correct you. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. That's something that we say when our voice is croaky and you need to cough. It's like I've got a frog in my throat going rabbit, rabbit, making me sound croaky. Okay, so when should we use the word death and pass away? That's a really interesting point, actually, because I haven't in the notes mentioned the phrase to pass away. Pass away is just another term, a softer term for the word die, to pass away. You can use them interchangeably, really. I would say pass away is just a little softer. So if you are trying to be delicate with someone, if you're trying to break news gently, if you're trying to tell people in a gentle way, then you might use pass away because it's more gentle. Whereas die or they are dead can be quite abrupt. But as someone mentioned earlier, is death impolite? None of these words are impolite. It's just maybe some are a little bit more blunt than others. So pass away is a gentler way of saying to die. What other questions do I have here? Anna, if I want to make someone calm at a funeral, not on a funeral, if I want to make someone calm at a funeral, how can I say in English, or what can I say in English? I'm going to come to that at the end of the lesson. So I've covered things to say when someone has lost a loved one, and we'll cover that at the end. So let me add to the notes the word pass away, just so I don't forget that. Let me do it here. Die, aka pass away. So if you don't know this abbreviation, aka, this stands for also known as. Also known as. So I am Anna Tyree, aka Anna English. So on here, I use my middle name, English, Anna English. But ordinarily, I'm Anna Tyree. So, hello, I'm Anna Tyree, aka Anna English, also known as. All right, so got my patrons talking here. What have we got? Hello, Peter. Hi, Anna. Hi, everyone. Death, socially impolite, a topic people find uncomfortable, confronting. So you're asking the question, is death socially impolite? I think death in general is not an easy thing to talk about, but I wouldn't say it's impolite. There are tactful ways to talk about death. Perhaps if someone has just lost someone close to them, then maybe it's not good to talk to them about it. Maybe they want to talk about it. I think you have to judge the situation for yourself at the time, depending on the person that you're with. But I wouldn't say it was impolite. It's just a sensitive subject, so you have to approach it with caution. Okay, so just carrying on with the death, dead, then we come on to the verb die. So to die is the verb that we would use. And if you're changing the verb, we've got the continuous form dying. Some people say we are dying from the moment we are born. We are dying, I am dying, you are dying. And if we're using it in the past form, we're using died, he died. So here are some examples of those verbs in action. When I die, I would like to be buried. When I die, I would like to be buried. You have to come to terms with the fact that you are dying. You have to come to terms with the fact that you are dying. Now, just in case you're not familiar with the phrase to come to terms with, to come to terms with something means that you accept it. So some people have cancer, maybe a very aggressive form of cancer, and sometimes it cannot be cured. Sometimes the doctors have no options to help. And in those cases, that person is dying from cancer. But sometimes they don't want to accept that they're dying. They still think they will get better. They still think there is a chance, a hope for them to heal and to improve. So they have not accepted that they are dying. They have not come to terms with the fact that they are dying. Okay, so that's a useful phrase to keep hold of, to come to terms with something. You can use it in all kinds of scenarios. I need to come to terms with the fact that my relationship is over. I need to come to terms with the fact that I am never going to be a gold medalist. I need to come to terms with the fact that my YouTube channel will never hit 1 million subscribers. Perhaps. Okay, so to come to terms with something. Let's go back to those notes. So you have to come to terms with the fact that you are dying, and in the past tense, Mr. Smith died on Friday afternoon. Mr. Smith died on Friday afternoon. Okay, so I think that's quite easy, really. Okay, so what else do we have? Okay, so we have the word kill, which is used often when talking about death. It's a verb, and it means to cause the death of a living thing. So if someone dies unexpectedly and you hear the news, you might say, what killed them? How did it happen? And you could say the cancer killed them, or they were killed, hopefully not, they were killed by another person. They were killed by lightning. They were killed by an avalanche. So to kill is something that causes death. All right, so there we have kill, die, dead, and death. So let me see what you guys are saying. Have you put these words into a sentence for me to check on? Okay, so Mohammed says, everyone will die by hook or by crook. Yes, that's a good sentence. Well done. Just make sure you're doing a capital letter at the beginning of your sentence and a full stop at the end. Manuel Miguel says, I'm from Brazil. The topic is heavy. Yes, it is, but necessary. Absolutely. Thank you for approaching it. That's all right. Life's Smile says, do you afraid of death? Do you afraid of death? This sentence isn't quite right. You should say, are you afraid of death? Are you afraid of death? Remember, afraid is a state, so you don't do it. You have it, you feel it. I am afraid of death. Are you afraid of death? So that's how you structure that sentence. Rommel has used dying in an interesting way and said, I'm dying to meet you. I'm dying to meet you. This is interesting because we use dying to mean I'm desperate or I'm very eager. I'm very keen. So I could say, I'm dying to eat a chocolate cake, which means I really, really, really want to eat a chocolate cake. Or I'm dying to meet you. I'm so eager to meet you. I can't wait. I'm very excited. So it's a very unusual way to use quite a heavy verb that means death. We use it in a more light-hearted and positive way sometimes. Okay, so let me just have a quick look at my Patreon Skype room and then we'll move on. So what have I got? I've also seen the use of pass on. So yeah, we talked about pass away. You pass away, you die. You can also pass on. And sometimes you'll hear people talking about passing over. People who believe in a life after death, you might talk about them passing over to the other side, to another existence, to pass over. So all these phrasal verbs can be used to pass on, to pass away, and to pass over. Dogs are known to die if they eat too much chocolate. Yes, that is correct. Chocolate is poisonous for dogs, so don't feed your dog chocolate. Peter, thanks. I agree. Impolite was the wrong word. It is a sensitive subject, that's right. And lots of tactic needed. Yes, we need to be tactile. Skype is having problems. It has nothing to do with Anna's channel or his chat room. It kicked me out and at least one other person in the YouTube chat room. I only got back in after using a VPN, so my computer seems to be in Canada. That's interesting. I don't know why that's happened. Important question. When daylight savings time starts in England, where you are, will the time of these lessons change? Yes, so in a few weeks we're going to have a change of time here in the UK. I think our clocks go forward on the 28th of March, I believe. I might be wrong. So yes, I will stick to certain times, probably 4 o'clock on Mondays. And so it might change for other people around the world if they don't have a change of time. I don't know. And we have a wonderful sentence here that's commonly used. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's absolutely true. So if you find something difficult, if it doesn't kill you, then it's probably going to make you a stronger person, which is fantastic. All right, so we've looked at the words die, kill, dead, and death. So now let's move on. Oh, I didn't give you the example sentences for kill, so I'll just do that quickly. So the example sentence I have here are, he was hit by a car and the impact killed him instantly. He was hit by a car and the impact killed him instantly. Cancer has killed many people over the years. All right. So we're now going to move on and look at other vocabulary. Before I do that, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has joined me. I am potentially going to do more live lessons, maybe 2 a week instead of 1, but I just need to get my act together a little bit at the moment. I'm drowning in work right now. But if you are new here and you're learning English, then make sure you click that subscribe button and the bell notification button so you don't miss any future lessons. And bear in mind, I've got over 300 lessons already uploaded, so please do have a look through the video backlog to see if you can find any lessons that are useful to you. If you're enjoying this as much as you can enjoy a morbid topic, then please give it a thumb. And if you are keen to do so to help me out, it would be wonderful if you could click the share button and share this with your friends. And I've done it again. I've made my camera all greasy. There we go, that's better. Okay, so let's carry on with today's lesson. So, looking at more vocabulary now, we've got, if a dead person is found, then we talk about finding a body. So you'll usually read in newspapers, a body was discovered by someone walking their dog, or 3 bodies were pulled out of the rubble. So if they haven't identified the bodies, they don't know who the dead people are, then they'll talk about a body. If you read about a body, then they mean a dead person. They'll never talk about pulling a body out of the rubble and it being someone who is alive. It will be a dead person. Okay, so a body. Let's carry on. Otherwise, a dead body is referred to as a corpse. So this is more of the technical term, a corpse, and that's how you refer to a dead body, a corpse. And that's a dead human body. A dead animal's body is referred to as a carcass. Carcass. Now, I don't pronounce this R. And I don't really pronounce this R either. So just be careful with these pronunciations. We've got a corpse, and then we have a carcass, a corpse and a carcass. Okay? All right. So when you read or hear about someone who is dead, then they'll probably be referred to as the deceased. So if I'm talking about a dead person, then if I don't really know their name, then I'm probably going to refer to them as the deceased. The deceased will be placed in this particular location until we can inform the family of the deceased about what's happened. So I'll refer to them as the deceased. Deceased. Also, if someone is referred to as the late, so if I use your name but call you the late, like if I talked about the late Anna English, that means that person has died quite a long time ago. So, or it might be recently actually, I don't think time has anything to do with it. But yes, late means they are now dead. So in the example here, I've written the late Mrs. Smith. The late Mrs. Smith. So you might be looking at a photograph and say, wow, who's that in that photograph? And I might say, oh, that's the late Mrs. Smith and her husband who now lives in Los Angeles. Okay, so then you'll know that Mrs. Smith is no longer living. Okay, do we have any questions? Can you call any human body a cadaver? I've never heard that term. What's a cadaver? Mohammed says a dead body is a cadaver. That may be an autopsy term, perhaps, but I've never heard it. Thank you for your kindness. You're welcome. How long is the mourning period in the UK when close family members pass away? There isn't a set period of time, not that I'm aware of. Perhaps if you are strongly religious, perhaps a religion might dictate a specific time, a period of mourning. And I know in the monarchy, they have certain rules that they must follow, certain ways of behaving and times for mourning and things like that. But I don't know what they are. A normal, everyday native will mourn for as long as they feel is necessary. Some people are in mourning for a long time, some people maybe not so much. It really is dependent on the individual, so there's no set rules around it. Okay, any other questions I can see? Hello Anna, great job on English teaching. I would like to ask to clarify the phrase pass away. Okay, so the phrase pass away, if my dog died last night, I could say my dog died last night, or I could say my dog passed away last night. So it's a phrasal verb. I've changed the verb pass to the past tense, passed away. My dog passed away last night. Or if I'm going to talk about my fears for the future, I might say if my dog passes away tonight, then I'm not quite sure what I'll do. I'll be alone and I'll be upset. If my dog dies tonight, I'm not sure what I'll do. I'll be alone and upset. I don't want my mum and dad to pass away, ever. I don't want my mum and dad to die, ever. So you see, I'm using it in exactly the same way as I would use the verb to die. Okay, I hope that helps to clear it up for you. Faris says, I don't afraid of death if it came from your hands. I'm not afraid of death. I am not afraid of death. Or I would not be afraid of death if it came from your hands. Slightly odd. But yes, just change the verb, please. I am not I do not. Okay, so Peter is just clearing up for us this word cadaver. He says it's a medical term for the body. So as a native, I have never heard this word. So I would suggest not to concern yourself with this word unless you are a medical professional or a scientist. Then that might be helpful for you. Otherwise, I have never heard it. I've heard of corpse and I've heard of a body. That's the general use term is a corpse and a body. Okay, so let's move on. Let me just get my notes back up for you. Right, so what happens when someone dies? Oh, it's all very morbid, isn't it? What happens when someone dies after a few hours after you die? Rigor mortis sets in. Rigor mortis. Rigor mortis is the stiffening of the body, and it wears off after a while. So a few hours after you've died, you get rigor mortis. So rigor mortis sets in. That's usually what we say, it sets in. So that's the phrasal verb we use. It sets in. So a few hours have passed, you've died, rigor mortis sets in. So you go very stiff, your body all hardens up. And then a little while after that, it wears off. So normally someone can tell, a professional, a police officer or a medical professional could tell how long approximately you have been dead depending on what stage of rigor mortis you're in. If you're in rigor mortis, then they can assume you've been dead for a few hours already. If you've gone past it, then they assume it's been a lot longer. Okay. So after death, let me carry on with these notes. Let me get them up. After death, each person in the UK needs the death to be certified and a death certificate issued. So as we all are born, we get a birth certificate. It's used as identification and to prove that we are from this country. It shows that we are British citizens born here. It shows what location you're born in, and it shows who your mother and father are and the date that you were born. And it's the same when you die. You'll have a death certificate issued. I'm not sure what details they put on the death certificate, but I assume they will put the time and date of death, and perhaps they'll put the cause of death on the location. Anyway, so let's carry on. So the death certificate is issued. If you've been ill and this is an expected death, then you will get a certificate from the doctor. So if you've had a terminal illness, perhaps you've been suffering from cancer or heart disease or heart failure, then it might be that you're going downhill, you're deteriorating, and the doctors think that you don't have much time left. They're expecting you not to live for much longer. If you die in hospital and you've been ill, then the doctor will just sign your death certificate. If, however, even though you're ill, you've gone home, you've been home for over 2 weeks, and then you die, then the doctor can't sign your death certificate. Usually your body will go to someone called a coroner. So if you've not been ill, then your body goes to a coroner. And this is a person who investigates deaths. So in terms of investigation, they're wanting to make sure that they are clear on exactly what's caused the death. A coroner will also order a post-mortem. Now, a post-mortem is the same as an autopsy. These are basically investigations. So a post-mortem or an autopsy. So the coroner may order a post-mortem or an autopsy so that they can do a further investigation to find out what's happened. And a post-mortem will normally be ordered if they think your death has been suspicious. If you're young, for example, and there's no reason why you should die. If there is suspected alcohol or drugs involved, then they'll do a post-mortem because they'll need to know what's gone on and what exactly caused the death. Or if there's been violence involved in the death, they need to know, did the violence lead to the death directly? Because if it did, then that means it's a murder investigation. So this is the coroner's job. They decide whether there needs to be a post-mortem and autopsy. And just to make it even more clear for you, let me get this up. It's so slow to change. An autopsy is a surgical procedure which consists of dissecting. This word means to cut up, to cut open, and very graphic. Which consists of dissecting the corpse to determine. If you haven't heard this word either, to determine means to find out, to come to a result, to come to a decision, to determine the cause of death. Okay? Now, if the body has not been officially identified, then it will be placed in a body bag. So you've probably seen these on lots of movies, to be placed in a body bag. Okay, it's just a big bag that they put bodies in to remove them from the scene, and to make sure that no one gets distressed, but also that the body and all its contents stay together. And then the body will be taken to a morgue until it can be identified. So a morgue is a place that bodies are held when they haven't yet been identified, apparently. Okay, so let me see what's going on here. Oh, wow, goodness me. Peter has dropped a humongous donation. Goodness me. Thank you, Peter. $93.20. That's very, very generous of you. You said a little while ago, you said you needed to buy a new mic. Here's some money for that and for other gear. Also seeing how SC works. Oh, Super Chats work. Oh, thank you. That's so kind. For anyone who doesn't know what a Super Chat is, it's a donation function that you can do while watching live, and all donations go towards the upgrade and the upkeep of this channel. So anyone who does donate is not really donating to me, they're donating to the community. So thank you, Peter. Peter is also one of my very loyal and very helpful patrons, always giving lots of advice and regularly donating via Patreon to keep me up and running. So thank you, Peter. And thank you to all of my patrons. You are all fabulous. Patrons are also rewarded. They are given access to drop boxes full of material, as well as other perks. Like some patrons are able to join me in my little special WhatsApp group. They get to join the Skype group, and also get to just talk to me via Messenger on a regular basis. So thank you to all patrons. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, there should be a link in the description box below. Right, what's going on here? So if you say it with the correct emphasis, I'll suspect you know it. Cadaver. I'm going to have to look this up and check it, because I honestly don't think I know it. It's not crazy. It is not a thing they don't say in the UK. They say it about as often in the UK as they say. Okay, it may be that lots of people know it, but I don't. I'm not saying that I have a huge vocabulary, so it might just be a word that I've missed. Americans definitely use it. Okay. I've heard this phrase when talking about death, to pop one's clogs. Yes, if you pop your clogs, then you have died. It is a kind of a jovial slang term to pop your clogs. Cadaver has been said repeatedly on screen in BBC series Sherlock. I mean, if you watch Sherlock, the vocabulary on that program is very advanced, so that makes sense. Here's a gloss with a nice London accent. Cadaver. Is that right? Cadaver? I will have to check it, guys. I do apologise that I don't know this word. I'm just a native. What can I do? Okay, people are asking me, how do I comfort someone who's lost someone close? I'm coming to it. I promise. It's at the end of my notes. All right, so let's get back to those notes. So we've had quite a few new words there. So after the death certificate is issued and the body has been identified, it will go to a mortuary or a funeral parlour to be stored until the cremation or burial. So we have mortuary, funeral parlour, cremation, burial. So what are these things? A cremation is disposing of a body by burning to ashes. And a cremation, if you are cremated, this will be done, it'll be carried out at a crematorium. So I think most people these days are cremated. I don't think there's much space to put people into a grave to bury them. So because we're running out of space on this little island, I think cremation is generally what happens after you die here. When I went to my dear friend Stephen's funeral, it was a cremation. He was cremated. So we went to a crematorium and had the service there, and then afterwards he was cremated. Can you hear that noise? There's a lot of building work going on around me at the moment, and it's driving me insane. So if you can hear strange drilling and knocking, banging, I do apologise. I'll have to go and shout at them. Okay, let's carry on. So a crematorium is a place where you are cremated. And then your ashes afterwards, it's really, I guess, dependent upon your wishes. Or the wishes of your family. Most people will scatter your ashes. So to scatter is to throw them out somewhere. You might scatter them at sea. So if you are a sailor, then you might be cremated and your ashes released over the ocean, or perhaps you'd like your ashes to be buried under a tree. Or some people keep people's ashes in an urn, which is like a vase with a lid, an urn, and put it on the mantelpiece. Yes, so ashes. And then we have burial. So a burial is disposing of a body by burying it in a hole in the ground. This hole in the ground is known as a grave, which will be marked. Once the grave has been filled in, it'll be marked as with a gravestone. So on the big stone, a headstone, sometimes it's also called a gravestone or a headstone, you'll have the name of the deceased, as well as the year they were born and the year that they died. And it might have a sentence that the family have written on there, like beloved daughter, or really made a difference in the world, or you'll be greatly missed. So they'll have some sort of words on there as well. Often it is believed that a grave is 6 feet deep. But this is not true. The depth of a grave varies from place to place. However, you will still hear the phrase 6 feet under. 6 feet under. So if I say to you, oh, yeah, my dad, he's 6 feet under, that phrase means he's dead. Or, oh, in 10 years' time, when I'm 6 feet under, that means in 10 years' time, when I expect I'll be dead. So we use it in a very nonchalant way, in a very light-hearted way, generally. Or you might hear it in gangster films. I'll put you 6 feet under, as a threat perhaps. But 6 feet actually is just, it makes us all think that a grave should be 6 feet deep, but that's not the case. It does vary. In some places it's a very shallow grave, and in other places it might be a much deeper grave. But bear in mind that phrase, 6 feet under, means buried, dead. So, what are my patrons saying? Let's have a look. Lots of chatter going on over here. I bet £5 that Anna realises she knows this word as soon as she said it, with the emphasis on the second syllable and not the first syllable, and also when she uses the correct vowel sound. English spelling is so awful. I'm so sorry for English spelling, but yes, Sherlock does use advanced vocab. I will stop talking about it. I cannot wait to get off this lesson and go and find out all about this word, and I promise you I don't think I know it, but I'll let you know afterwards. Just like pop your clogs is to shuffle off this mortal, that should be mortal, not moral, mortal coil, or I have heard just shuffle off. Yeah, there's lots of different ways, like slang terms that we use to shuffle off this mortal coil, or shuffle off. I haven't heard shuffle off, but I have heard to shuffle off the mortal coil. Less than a month ago, I was sure I didn't know the word trough. Then I looked it up. Oh, trough. Yes, it's got a very strange spelling, and this word is it's where a pig eats from. So a pig will eat out of a trough, and it's spelt very bizarrely. Okay, well, I'll let you know after when I found out. But for now, let's carry on with the lesson. Okay, so on the day of the burial, or on the day of the cremation, the body is placed in a coffin. So that's the wooden box that your body goes in when you're dead. And it's driven in a hearse. A hearse. So a hearse is the long black vehicle. It has big windows at the back, and the coffin is displayed in the back of the hearse, and you can see it clearly through the side windows. And often you'll see them driving slowly towards the place where the funeral will happen, the crematorium or to the church or wherever it's going. And you'll probably see arrangements of flowers saying dad, or loving daughter, or whatever it is. But it's for everyone to see. And traditionally, it doesn't happen so much now because people don't wear hats. Have I spelt it wrong? Is someone telling me I spelt it wrong? If I spelt it wrong, do let me know. Let me quickly check it. I spelt it wrong. Okay. Yeah, I'll correct that spelling. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, see, that's what I love about you guys. You're always catching me when I fall. All right. Okay. Yeah. So if a hearse passes by in the streets, normally complete strangers, no matter who you are, would take off their hat and hold it to their chest as a sign of respect. So you see a coffin passing, a funeral procession passing. Sometimes there's someone walking in front of the car, maybe the funeral director, and following the hearse would be the other cars with the family members and close friends perhaps. But they would go very slowly through the streets, and people would take off their hats. These days we don't wear hats very often, so it doesn't really happen, but you might see it a lot in films. And certainly if it's a big state funeral, then you'll see people lining the streets to show their respect, to see the coffin passing by in the hearse. Okay, so let's get back to this. So I'd love to know if you have a similar thing in your country, actually. So the coffin, and it's driven in a hearse to the place where the funeral service will take place. So the service happens around the funeral. They don't just take the coffin and burn it or bury it. We have a service which is expected. Sometimes the coffin will be carried from the hearse by members of the family. So you'll see people putting the coffin on their shoulders. Normally there's 4 or 6 people will carry the coffin on their shoulder, and they walk it into the place where the funeral service will happen. To do this is called being a pallbearer. Pallbearer. I thought it was coffin bearer, but when I looked it up, apparently this is the word for that role. Okay. So in some funeral services, the coffin may be open. So the top half of the coffin may be open, and the corpse will be it'll have makeup on and things so that it doesn't look too scary. And this is for loved ones to see the deceased one last time. The funeral is organised with the help of a funeral director, and the funeral service will traditionally be led by a religious leader, like a priest, or it'll be led by a civil servant. Okay, so I think that's pretty similar to most countries. I'm guessing that in your country, when you have a funeral, it's led by a religious leader. So, what are you guys saying? Coffin is similar in Arabic. That's interesting. Okay. Now, interestingly, there are two. So you have a coffin and you also have a casket. That's something I'm coming on to in a minute. And there's a slight difference. I thought they were the same, but actually looking it up, there is a difference. I'll come on to that in a minute. Okay, I can't see any relative questions there, so I'm going to move on, have a quick look at... I'm always dropping words and not checking my spelling. I type too quick, says Peter. Yeah, don't worry. Okay, let's get back to those notes then. So, during the funeral, there will be prayers and readings. So the prayers will normally be led by the priest or the vicar, whoever is running the service. And the readings may be poems, or it might be a speech that someone has written. And this is normally given by members of the family or friends might do a reading. At Stephen's funeral, we had readings from his brother. We had lots of readings by his friends. And we had a priest who ran the service, who said a few prayers, and it was a very nice service actually. Very sad, of course, but it was a nice service. There will also be flowers. Flowers feature quite heavily in funerals. You'll see people laying flowers on coffins or throwing flowers into a grave if there's a burial. And there'll be lots of weeping mourners. Weeping mourners. A mourner is someone who is sad, who is showing their sadness and loss. And usually at funerals, people wear black. So you might wear black suits, black dresses, unless it's specifically stated otherwise. So when a funeral is announced, they might say, I want everyone to wear pink, because this is a little girl, she loved pink. We don't want it to be really sad and morbid. We want everyone to wear bright colours. For Stephen's funeral, we were asked no black ties. So the men were asked not to wear black ties. So they still wore suits and still wore dark clothes, but the men wore colourful ties because Stephen had a terrible collection of ties. His ties were awful. Very bad taste ties. So all the men were asked to wear crazy ties, which was a nice touch. Okay, let's go back to those notes. Usually music is played or hymns are sung, and the service concludes with the coffin either being lowered into the ground. So if this is a burial, the coffin will get lowered into the ground, and sometimes things will then be thrown into the grave. It might be flowers, or it might be a teddy bear or something that means something to the person. Or if it's a cremation, the coffin will conclude with the coffin. It will conclude with the coffin being concealed behind a curtain. So at the cremation, you don't see a coffin going into fire like you sometimes see in the movies. I've seen that in silly films where the coffin, the door opens at the end. You see the furnace. The furnace is like the oven where they burn the body. and you see the coffin going in to the furnace and being burnt up. You don't see that. I've been to 2 cremations and you don't see that. What they do is they just have curtains, and the curtains will close so you can no longer see the coffin, and it's a way of saying goodbye. And then the cremation will happen later, behind closed doors, so no one has to witness it. A coffin of higher quality and with a more rectangular shape is called a casket. Now this is interesting. So a coffin is usually cheaper, lower quality, and it has a shape where it goes broader at the shoulders and then long and thin down to the feet. That's a coffin. And a casket is more like a rectangle. So you can't see where the shoulders would be. It's less body shaped. And it's usually, maybe it's made out of mahogany, or maybe it's just a nicer wood. I saw one that was made of wicker. After Stephen's funeral, the person coming in afterwards was in a wicker casket. And they can be very expensive, apparently. Anyway, so that's the difference between a coffin and a casket. So, what do we have? Right, so I have to make a correction here because I realised after I typed this I'd missed something off. If your married partner has died, you become a widow. If you are a woman. So if you're a woman and your husband dies, you are a widow. Or a widower. Widower. If you're a man. So if you're a man and your wife dies, then you are a widower. If you're a woman and your husband dies, you are a widow. Or if you're in a same-sex marriage, then just depends on your sex. So if you're a woman, you're a widow. If you're a man, you're a widower. Okay? To announce someone's death publicly, there is normally an obituary. Now, this is like an ad or an article placed traditionally in a newspaper. Or nowadays it would likely go onto the internet because people don't really read papers anymore. Well, they do, but not as much as they used to. So it might go on Facebook, for example, so that all that person's friends and family can see the details. And this obituary notifies of the death, so it tells people who doesn't know. And it sometimes will include a brief biography. So it might say, this man was an incredible man, achieved so much in his life, and will be greatly missed by all the school children that he helped throughout the years. And then it might have details of the funeral as well. So it might say, if you would like to celebrate this person's life, please be at this address at this time. Okay, so when someone dies, then the people who knew and cared about that person enter into a state of sadness. They begin to grieve. They will also begin... typo. They begin to grieve. They will also begin to mourn. So to grieve is a verb. Grieve. And it's feeling intense sorrow and distress. This is all about how you feel. You're grieving. And the example sentence I've given here is, she is grieving the death of her father. You must allow yourself time to grieve. She is grieving the death of her father. You must allow yourself time to grieve. Okay? And then the word to mourn can be a noun or a verb. Okay, so as a noun, usually would say in mourning. I am in mourning. They are in mourning. The country is in mourning. But you can also quite commonly use it as a verb. He is mourning. We are mourning. We will mourn the death. So to mourn is to express sorrow or grief after a death. So grieving, the way I think about this is, because they are very similar and you can kind of use them interchangeably, but there is a difference. If I'm grieving, I might be crying. So I'm feeling broken inside and I'm crying, sobbing quietly. I can't eat. I can't function because I'm grieving. It's how I feel. If I'm mourning, I might feel exactly the same, but in mourning, I will wear black. I might wear black for a week. I might decide to close my business. I might decide not to do any live lessons for a month because I'm in mourning. I'm expressing my grief. So in Buckingham Palace, when someone in the family dies, they will normally they will take down the flag. So they won't fly the flag full height. I think they either take it all the way down or halfway down. If someone knows actually and can tell me, I'd really appreciate that. But they have a certain protocol to show that they are in mourning. So they are sad, they are expressing their sorrow rather than just feeling it. So to grieve is to feel, to mourn is to express. Okay, so let's go back to those notes. So here I've got, he is mourning the death of his wife and he will therefore wear black for the rest of the week. And the shops were closed and a 2-minute silence was observed. The country was in mourning for its princess. Okay. All right, I hope that's clear. Let me see what you guys are saying. I've not spoken to you for a little while, so let's have a look. Vampires always hide in coffins. Yes, that's right. Yep, you will often see vampire movies and the vampires sleep in coffins or caskets, don't they? Peter says, another phrase, a favourite. Late for your own funeral. Yes, if someone is always late for things. Oh, here you go. Usually humorous. Said about somebody who is always late for things. You don't need to. Said about someone who is always late for things. So if I'm always late for my live lessons, which I sometimes am, you please forgive me. If I'm late for my live lessons, you might say to me, Anna, you'll be late for your own funeral. It's just a very funny little phrase. And a tip. Write the vocab words in lowercase and bold, not uppercase and bold. Apple Pages didn't underline hearse because it was all uppercase. Ah, I didn't know that. Thank you. The other good thing about writing in lowercase is that you can use uppercase when it is necessary, like A Midsummer Night's Dream. That way students can see that we keep all of those letters uppercase. I see. Okay, thank you very much. Half-mast and half-staff refers to a flag flying below the summit of a pole. In many countries, this is seen as a symbol of respect, mourning, distress, or in some cases, a salute. So yes, half-mast. Thank you very much. So when someone dies in the royal family or anyone important to the state, then the flag above the palace will fly half-mast, so it'll be halfway down the pole. So you can see that they are officially in mourning, as it's a sign of respect. Okay, so we're not that far off the end. I've just got 2 more topics to cover, and this is a list of vocabulary now that we're going to cover for types of death. Types of death. And then we'll come on to what you say to someone when they've experienced a death. Okay, if you're still with me, our numbers are dropping, but if you're still with me, thank you for sticking with me. Make sure you click that thumb up button and let's get through to the end. So, let's go. Types of death. Common vocabulary for types of death are as follows. Natural causes. So you'll often hear that particularly an older person will die of natural causes. Something natural in the body caused death, like organ failure. So it's natural that an old person eventually will die because of organ failure. And the example sentence here is, he died of natural causes. And that's generally the sentence we would use. They died of natural causes. Then we have homicide, also known as murder, and it's the act of taking the life of another person. So if I take someone else's life, I've committed homicide or I've committed murder. And the example sentence I've given here is, the police had several unrelated homicides to deal with over the weekend. So here I use the word unrelated. It means that although there have been multiple killings, multiple murders, we don't think it's the same person or to do with the same people. They're unrelated. Okay, and to deal with something is to handle it. I think we've covered that one before. Then we have suicide, and this is a very sad one. Suicide is the act of killing yourself. So some people get to the point where they feel they can no longer go on in life, that life is too difficult, and they decide to take their own life, which is very sad. Far too many young men are committing suicide. He committed suicide because he felt he could not go on living. Okay. Then we have electrocuted. If you are electrocuted, then you are killed by electricity, so by an electric current. And the example sentence I've given here is, she had worked as an electrician, that's a mouthful. She had worked as an electrician for years, but somehow on the 23rd of June, she did something very stupid and electrocuted herself. And then we have euthanasia. Euthanasia, and this is the act of administering drugs to cause a painless death, used for humans in some countries where it's legal, like prisoners, for example, might be euthanized, or for patients who have degenerative diseases. Also, it can be used on animals. The example I've given here is, the prisoner elected to be euthanized. So let me just talk about that briefly. So in the UK, it's not legal to have elective euthanasia. I'm not sure about that one. But you cannot be euthanized in the UK. In some countries, prisoners are still facing the death penalty. So if you've committed a terrible crime and you have been convicted beyond any reasonable doubt, they are absolutely certain that you have done this horrendous crime, then you might be facing the death penalty, where they will euthanize you. They will pump drugs into your body that will stop your heart. And that's legal, but in other places it's not legal. Here it's not legal. In some countries, if you're ill, maybe if you have MS, multiple sclerosis, where your body is breaking down, like the nervous system is breaking down, and you are becoming worse and worse, and you're losing more and more control, then you may feel that you don't want to live like that anymore. You don't want to lose your dignity. And so some people ask to be euthanized. They want to be killed, they want to die, but obviously in a painless way. And in some countries, I'm not sure which ones, but in some countries it's legal to do that. Here it's not. And I know some people from this country decide to go to another country to have that, to experience a painless death because they're so ill and they're in so much pain, and they don't think they're ever going to get better. And then we use it with animals. So if an animal has been hurt, or if it's ill and it cannot be healed, or in some cases if a dog, for example, is a dangerous dog, if it's attacked someone, then the animals will be euthanized. Okay. Oh, it's such a sad topic. So, let's have a quick look what you guys are saying. Okay. So another word for a type of death is to be put down. This is very similar to euthanasia, but it's the more common phrase that we use when talking about animals. So we talk about our animals being euthanized, we say they've been put down. That's what we tend to say, to be put down. Or put to sleep. There we go, that AKA, also known as, again, to put to sleep. This means an animal is killed humanely by a human, usually because the animal is very sick or injured and cannot be helped. And here, let me just make this italic. The example sentence, our lovely little dog had to be put down due to a huge tumour which was causing her a lot of pain. Okay. Then we have the word suffocate. Suffocate. So you are prevented from breathing in air, and this leads to asphyxiation and death. Now, there is a slight difference between suffocation and asphyxiation, but I'm not altogether sure what it is. Asphyxiation is more to do with carbon dioxide in your system and not absorbing oxygen or something. So it's a much more technical term. And suffocation is when there is a blockage to your airways, when you cannot physically breathe in air. And both suffocation and asphyxiation lead to death. Okay? And the example sentence I've given here is, they were caught in the avalanche and suffocated under the snow. Okay, then we have the word hung. I've used it in the past tense. To hang is the pure version of the verb, to hang. But here I've written it in the past tense, hung. They were hung. And this is to be killed by tying a rope around the neck and removing the support of the lower body. So you hang, you literally dangle from your neck, and this can cause death in a multitude of ways, which we won't go into. I'm sure you can work it out. The example sentence I've given is, in the old days they used to hang the prisoners in front of a crowd to deter would-be criminals. Now here, this term would-be means people who aren't yet but might be in the future. So would-be criminals. Would-be criminals. And the last one, here we go. The last one is decapitate. So if you have been decapitated, it means the head is separated from the body, which of course would cause instant death. And the example sentence is, the couple were decapitated in a crash. The couple were decapitated in a crash. Okay, wow. That is morbid, isn't it? Now, there are other ways, of course, that you might die. But those just kind of cover off some of the general terms. I would be here all day if I went through every single possibility cause of death. So someone is saying hung is not the right term, but I would argue this is one of those very difficult one because we always, when we learn history, we talk about being hung, drawn and quartered. To be hung, drawn and quartered was the old-fashioned punishment where you would first be hung from the neck and then you would be stretched, so you'd have your arms and ankles tied and you'd be stretched out. And then you'd be quartered where they would cut your body into four and send your body all over the place. So hanged, yes, but also hung is used. And when you're talking generally to, when you're talking to a native, they will use hung regularly, okay? Okay, so hanged is probably more technically correct, but hung is regularly used because of that thing in history, hung, drawn and quartered, which is what we're always taught. So I will write hanged in here as well, just so that's not missed. Okay, so thank you for pointing that out. I'm sure there's lots more reading that can be done around that topic as well, the difference between hung and hanged. For us, hanged it sounds weird. Hanged, it sounds unusual. Anyway, let's move on. So we're finally at the point that everyone's been asking for. What do you say to someone who has lost someone close to them? It can be very difficult to know what to say. I've been in this position many times. I don't like to go to funerals because I don't know what to say to people. And so what I've done here is written down a list of common kind of wishes that you can bear to people, things that you can say to people when you're not sure. Okay, so go through these and then I can let you all go. So it can be hard to know what to say to someone who is in mourning. Here are the most common wishes that we tend to use in the UK. You would say, my condolences. And this is only used to say sorry about something. Usually when there's been a death, my condolences. Or if something very bad has happened, something very sad and upsetting, you could use this phrase, my condolences. You could say, I am sorry for your loss. Very sorry for your loss. You could say, he or she will be greatly missed. By doing this, you're giving them a little bit of comfort, just expressing what a wonderful person it is that has been lost and that they will be greatly missed. Or you might say, I'm so sorry to hear about Stephen. He will be greatly missed. My condolences. So you can mix and match these sentences. You could express empathy by saying, I can't imagine how you're feeling, or I can't imagine what you must be going through. So you can try to express that it must be very hard for the person that you're talking to, but that you have no idea how it must feel, how painful it must be. You could say, there are no words to express how sorry I am. How sorry I am. I can't talk. There are no words to express how sorry I am. Or you could say, and this is commonly used as well, you are in our thoughts and prayers. We're thinking of you. And extending my most heartfelt condolences to you and your family. You could say, our sympathy is with you in your time of grieving. Our sympathy is with you in your time of grieving. Or, you have my deepest, sincerest sympathy. Okay, so those are just a few of the commonly used terms. But I think as long as you're sincere and sensitive, then and don't ignore the fact. If someone has experienced a death, don't completely ignore it. It's like having an elephant in the room. It's such a big thing to happen to someone. They don't want small talk necessarily. You have to acknowledge it in some way, even if you just say, I'm sorry for your loss, and then move on. You have to acknowledge it with someone, I think. Okay, so let's have a look at what my patrons are saying. It's been a little while. So, goodbye, Anna. I have to leave. Oh, you're probably left by now, but thank you for joining us. Execution as a punishment is usually considered not to be euthanasia. Even if what they do is exactly the same, euthanasia means a good death, and there is nothing good about execution. Okay, yeah, so I didn't include the word execution, so that's probably something I should add on. So to be executed, I guess, yes, is a word more commonly used with prisoners as a punishment. So thank you for bringing that up. I will add that to the list. Peter said, would normally use hung. As a native speaker, I will agree that hanged sounds weird. I know it is correct, but a lot of people just won't say it. For everything except a criminal, after you hang the thing, it's hung up. Okay, well, I'm glad you guys agree with me, because I do start to doubt myself sometimes. But yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna add execution to the list. And I'm just gonna talk to you guys on YouTube. Let me just get my face back up on screen. Hi. So Daniel's saying, how do you pronounce condolences? Condolences. My condolences. So there's a schwa there at the beginning. Condolences. Condolences. Dilkasha says, is this every day, the same time, live every day? No, we're live every Monday. So every Monday at 4 o'clock UK time. And I may be adding an additional live stream towards the end of the week, but that won't be coming this week. It'll be coming from next week, probably. The best thing to do is to follow me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And there I will always announce any changes that are coming up. So if you follow me on those social platforms, then you'll have a better idea of what's going on. But I am trying to make sure that I'm more standard with the times of release. I'm aiming to release new videos every Saturday morning as well. So on Saturday mornings around 9 o'clock, I'll be releasing a new pre-recorded video for you, and always a live lesson on Monday. Jade has said, does heartfelt mean feeling? So if you feel something in your heart, it means that it's a genuine feeling. So my heartfelt condolences means I'm sorry for you. I mean it from my heart. So you can just say, sorry, I'm sorry, and not mean it. But if you really mean it from your heart, it's heartfelt. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Heartfelt. Peter says, thank you for covering a difficult topic, Anna. Peter, you're very welcome. Like I said, I felt it was necessary given my recent experience. And for those of you who have been following this channel for a while, then you may also be aware of my friend Stephen, who has passed away. He was the chap who helped me with one of the accent videos. He was from Glasgow. So if you see the Glasgow accent video with Stephen, this is the chap that we have unfortunately said goodbye to. It is a terrible shame. So there we go. I do hope you found that helpful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumb up. If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe and press the bell notification button. These notes are going to be cleared up now, and then I'm going to put them onto my website. I'm also going to put them into the Patreon box. So patrons $3 and upwards, you'll be getting these notes within the next hour. Peter, of course, you're a patron anyway, so you'll have access to them. But thank you again for that super chat. That was very kind of you. And guys, thank you for joining me. Take care. I will see you. There'll be a lesson out on Saturday. I might see you before then, but we'll see. Okay, take care.